an inflation into a deflation. The signs of deflation are everywhere. Everything's down. Consumer electronics, cars, houses, stocks, even labor, everything is down and dropping. And this is the part of the coming second Great Depression that I've been writing about for so many decades. This is it. We're in it. And the only way out of it is either to let it run its course and repair it, or to keep printing money even more quickly and then kick into a hyperinflation. Well, a hyperinflation destroys institutions. That's the function of it. It wipes out debt, so it wipes the slate clean. What happens in a hyperinflation is that, for example, the Social Security you were promised becomes worthless. In the German hyperinflation, it took a wheelbarrow full of German marks to buy a loaf of bread. What happens when you get a breakdown in institutions? Well, everyone's got guns here. Not everyone, but there are a huge number of guns among the public, more than just the United States. What is going to happen? Well, why don't you just use your imagination?
Something else that I want to get to, you have a chapter in your book, and it addresses the issue of conspiracy. And, you know, there are people out there, why are we doing such stupid things? What is the purpose? Let's address for a moment the Bank of International Settlements. Most people probably have never heard of it before, but it's the central banker's central bank.
Well, I couldn't write a book about gold without mentioning conspiracy. I wasn't eager to do it because I don't believe in them. And I confronted it as honestly as I could. I looked at everything. But the thing that really snapped for me was when a respected world encyclopedia like Wikipedia pointed to Harry Dexter White as a Soviet spy at the time he was structuring our currency. You know, that did something to me, and maybe I was naive before. I look at all these things, and I said to myself, I guess the reason I didn't believe in a conspiracy was because I didn't believe that kind of a secret could be kept. How could you keep a secret that enormous of debauching the currency? How could you possibly keep it a secret for a century and somebody not spilling the beans? And then it finally struck me when I thought about Harry Dexter White. I pondered on that and brooded on it. And I said the only possible way to have hidden it was to hide it right out in the open. So I rummaged through my mind, and I came across this Bank for International Settlements, the BIS. Very few people know anything about it. I have to read this sentence from my book. The bank in Basel has the most incredible powers, including inviolability of all papers and documents, immunity from jurisdiction and arrest, the right to use codes in official communications, and to receive or send documents by couriers or diplomatic bags. It is not open to the public, protected by armed guards, and somebody ought to call for an audit of the BIS also. The fact remains that some banks own the banks that control America's interest rates, that in turn control the economy and the stock market. In other words, the banks, the American Central Bank, the Fed, controls the economy through interest rates and controlling the money supply. That bank is controlled by a central bank called the BIS, about which almost nothing is known. Listen, this book is a whistle-blowing book. It could blow the top off this thing. If the BIS controls the central banks that control the world's economies, imagine the power it has. Who owns it? Where are they? What do we know? Trillions of dollars are going through that place. Why don't we know more about it? Now, I'm not saying there is a conspiracy, but I'm saying we need to have an audit of that bank, and Americans should demand to know who it is that is controlling our central bank.
I want to move on to probably some of the more, I guess, radical predictions. You have a chapter in your book, and I'm just going to go through a couple of these. The end of the age of jobs and the coming age of robots, the return of Thomas Malthus, resource scarcity, the coming religious wars, in something that we see it in the headlines, nobody takes much interest in it, but you talk about China has enough money and is growing enough reserves, they could start buying the majority of the world's hard assets and free market trading in many of them.
Well, and you want that in one sentence, or shall I describe the universe in one sentence or less?
If you can, you'll be a genius.
The end of the age of jobs is obvious. We are now at the stage of society where Our machines have taken over so much of our work that not everybody has to work. This is going to require an enormous restructuring of society and the end of the age of capitalism. What it will evolve to, I'm still working out. And the age of robots, of course, are obvious also. We have cell phones. It won't take much to put some machinery around them, and they're wireless already, so we already have robots, or some genius out there is going to figure out how to do that and make himself a fortune to just make a personal robot, and there will also be personal functions, which will again change the world. In terms of religious wars, well, we're in one. I've been predicting that for several decades, and every conflict in the world today, whether it's Northern Ireland or which is within there are two religious wars. First of all, I'm neutral. Let me stress that. And I'm just a reporter, and please don't blame the messenger for the news. You have internecine warfare, civil wars within religions, between what I call the orthodox and the seculars, and that's in every religion. And you also have wars between religions, which is a religious war. So you've got both these balls in motion at the same time. And if you look at every conflict in the world, you see every variety. Northern Ireland is between Catholics and Protestants. The war in Europe was between Eastern Christianity and Western Christianity, along with over the Muslims. You have the war in Israel between Muslims and Jews, and within the Israelis themselves. As soon as the external war is solved, there'll be a terrible civil war between the Orthodox and the secular. This is all going to happen. Do I hope it happens? I hope none of this happens. But I'm a reporter, and I will not lie, and I will not make things look soft. In terms of China buying the world, yeah, they got $2.5 trillion. If they wanted to buy Los Angeles, you'd think they couldn't do it, or any city you happen to be in. This is a very serious problem. Either they haven't thought of it, or they are just afraid to cause a political outcry and maybe have the U.S. dollar be canceled on its own. North Korea, just recently, one morning, people woke up, the Korean won, there's North Korea. The people woke up and they said, your currency is canceled, there's a new one. Come to the bank, and you can have a maximum of $40. And all the people with their paper won under their pillows, under their mattresses, suddenly were poor. And they didn't take it very well, but that's the kind of thing that could happen. You better protect yourself. This will be the biggest transfer of wealth in history, and only those who deserve to have money will wind up with it. And you know who those people are? The ones who deserve it, the ones who have it.
You've seen both big run-ups in gold. In the 70s, you were around, you were predicting it, you were speaking about it. And then, of course, when the gold to Dow ratio turned, you talked about putting your subscribers back into gold. How would you contrast this bull market that we've seen develop in this decade to, let's say, the one that occurred in the 70s?
That's another good question. I think the difference is the planetary reach of knowledge. The Internet, as I said it would in 1995, has changed everything, really. It's basically eliminated the middleman, which is why airline fares have collapsed, for example. But it also has made knowledge available to the whole world at fingertips. And as a result, there's the gold haters, the ones who have tried to suppress the price of gold all these years, are suddenly no longer in control of the means of communication. For example, the United States government has the biggest pile of gold in the world, but they price it at $42.50, which sounds like you could go there and buy it at that price and sell it in the open market of over $1,000, but it doesn't work that way. They won't sell it to you. So they price it at that price to make it look cheaper, to make it lower, to make it less conspicuous. But you don't dare ask for it. It would be like Oliver Twist's a book where you ask for more. That is not allowed. So, and why is the U.S. the only government that hasn't sold its gold? All the other central bankers have sold their gold, and the U.S. has its gold. Are they preparing the way for a new currency? And what does that mean to your savings? So you've got a lubricatory type of background now, where if there were a sudden currency crisis and the price of gold began to leap up to, say, $2,000, and people could see that paper currencies were crashing, you would have paper thrown at gold on a level that incomprehensible to this generation. It happened at the end of the 1700s in France when their currencies had a hyperinflation, and at the end of hyperinflations, but not always. And I have to feel my way. I'm not sure what's going to be happening, but I think that the knowledge about gold is much greater. There are more people who have who have gold and who have a vested interest in it, and it's international. It's not just America. Americans are very